Hello and welcome to the USA Volleyball Show, the official podcast of USA Volleyball. My name is Stephen Munson here with Severin Lavenstein and a special guest, Kyle Dagostino, libero with the U.S. men's national team. We're here live-ish at the Volleyball Nations League here in Chicago, Illinois, where I just found out you had a lot of family here, Kyle. But to start off, Kyle, how are you doing this week?
Pretty well. We're looking forward to playing in front of a home crowd. It doesn't happen all that often. So for us, it's an exciting opportunity, and it's against some pretty good competition. So that makes it even better.
Yeah. You have a lot of family attending the match tonight or this week, I mean?
Yeah, I should. My dad's from Chicago, so I have a lot of cousins that still live up here, a lot of aunts and uncles. So should be probably around 10 to 15 people at least to start off with, and we'll see from there.
Nice.
Always a little bit more excitement playing in the U.S. maybe when you get these chances to play in front of family, in front of some home crowds.
Yeah, it is definitely. Like I said, it doesn't happen all that often. The last opportunity was in Anaheim a couple of summers ago, so this is going to be a lot of fun, especially when you get up against some beasts like Poland and Italy.
I was about to ask too, week two, so you kind of have an idea of, maybe how things looked in week one and then going against some really tough opponents this week. Are you kind of sort of trying to figure out how you guys might ramp up to play those opponents like Italy and Poland and just kind of looking forward to the week that way?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you play a team like Italy or Poland and they have some of their most experienced players, you understand it's going to be a difficult match. And we're anticipating, funny enough, that maybe those crowds are going to be cheering for the other team a little bit more, especially against Poland. But given the resources we have as a program, with our scouting reports and our preparation, I think we'll be in good shape.
Are there more nerves playing on U.S. soil for you personally, or is it just kind of like another competition, another match?
I think it's just another competition, another match. I would say maybe a bit more like positive anxiety. Okay. I'm looking forward to it a little bit more, but I don't feel any added stress or added nerves. I think it's just going to be a really fun opportunity, a fun thing to do with this group of guys.
Kyle, I want to focus more on you specifically. This year, I feel like you've taken on more of a leadership role. You've always been kind of a leader, but specifically this year, I don't know, just watching you in practice, seeing the way you interact with a lot of younger guys this year. It feels like it's more of a leadership role for you. Is that true? And how has that kind of been a shift for you at all this year?
Yeah. Well, I was captain of the team in the first week in Brazil, and understanding that we have a lot of older guys right now that are either finished playing or not playing at least this summer or this VNL. So it's given an opportunity to some of the other guys that have maybe been around in secondary positions, like myself, to step in and lead a little bit more and to really try to set the standard with this younger group, with these newer faces of what USA Volleyball is about, how we want to run our program, and what the standards are that we want to maintain. Karch has been really great about extending some chances to new faces to step in and lead. I would say that he and I have had a lot of conversations throughout the off season, the professional season, and even at the beginning of the summer with things or spaces that he thinks I could step into or ways that I could help out with the team. And even if there's no conversation, he'll put something on my plate and say, would you mind taking care of this for me? So it has felt more of a collaborative effort, where in the past, I think I understood pretty early on, those roles were already solidified. I have this job that I can do, and I'm going to do my job the best I can. But now with those individuals and those people gone, those spaces open, there are other opportunities to help out.
Is that a lot of on and off the court? Is that things like making sure everybody gets on the bus versus, hey, this positioning for this libero maybe needs to shift a little bit at this point? Is it both? Is it maybe more one than the other?
I would say it's a little bit of both. I would primarily on the court, but there have been some things off the court, like roommate list. Karch asked me to make a roommate list for the guys in Brazil, and even though I don't have a lot of personal experience with most of the guys that went to Brazil before the trip, he wanted us to room with people that we didn't have prior relationships with, to try to build that foundation, that chemistry, just by interacting a little bit more frequently with people that you don't really know. So I would say a bit of both.
I love that you were kind of in charge of the roommate list. I want to dive into that a little bit more. And before we started recording, we talked about your wedding too, that we want to get back to. But it was the putting together the roommate list, kind of like the wedding guest list, and like seating people at different tables. Or how did you go about that and choosing where people went?
The seating list at a wedding is much more complicated. many more things to consider.
Nuances, yeah.
Yeah. So with the rooming list, we had a few guys that have played previously together, like Jordan Ewert and I played together in college. Jordan Ewert and Quinn Isaacson played together professionally, for example. So trying to find some of those relationships that were not established or barely established. And I know that we had some guys that had played together on a Pan Am team or a NORCECA Final Six team. Took a little bit of thought. And I haven't always been present for those teams, so I just kind of took some liberties at guessing. But I wanted to get the 6 or 7 older guys, or the ones that had traveled more, and a chance to get to know somebody like Nolan Flexen. So Matt Knigge has a chance to spend a week. Actually, it ended up being 2 weeks because we were down there early training in Saquarema with the Brazilian national team. Give them a good chance to get to know each other before we really start playing. As far as the wedding seating list, I would love to take credit, but that was mostly my wife and my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Maybe it's more like being an RA than a wedding planner.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Were there any of the guys that kind of came back to you and were like, thank you for putting me with him, or maybe the opposite, like, why'd you put me with this guy?
Everybody. Absolutely. No. I wish.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it was, I think everybody appreciated and enjoyed the pair that they were with.
Nice.
You talked about more responsibilities under Karch's leadership. Obviously, it's the first year with Karch as the head coach. We've got 1 week down in the books. We're in the process of week 2. How has his coaching and leadership style been, and what have you really noticed about him at the helm so far this season?
Yeah, good question. That was something I was actually asked in the press conference for week 1, and how I kind of answered it was I feel like he's been pretty collaborative. I've talked about him reaching out to me in different ways, but I see him doing that with other people. He was in constant communication with us through the off season. And I think he's using us in ways to help him and also help the program, especially some of us that have been around a little bit more. I think one of his biggest strengths is establishing relationships and trying to maintain genuine relationships with the players. That is huge, but it's still early in the tournament, and it's definitely early in the quad. So we are still learning his style of coaching, and he's still learning our style of preferred coaching or our style of play. But to have somebody like Javi on staff who has worked with us in the past, understood, how we function or what are the ways to bring out our best. And then to have somebody like Luca as well, who has worked specifically with Karch in the past and has had a lot of success with Karch. They have a good dynamic to help Javi and to bring everybody into their style as well. So I think it's going to be natural if we have some bumps in the road, but I would anticipate that after this first year, or even at some point in the next summer, we get into a really good groove as staff and players, and hopefully from there we just take off.
You mentioned, your conversations with Karch and you kind of stepping into that leadership role a little bit more. Are there any of the veteran players or even like some of the coaching staff like Karch that you kind of like look up to as leaders, and what kind of qualities do you take away from them?
Sure. I think Garrett is a great example. Garrett Monga-Tatia is a great example of somebody that I don't want to say led from the shadows, because it wasn't like he was not present, but maybe didn't always get the spotlight. Something that he did really well was establish real relationships with everybody, and he understood what made me tick versus Tom Jeske versus Micah Ma'a, and he could use that to his advantage and the team's advantage when we needed a little bit more from that individual, or we needed a shift in attitude. I see Karch doing that, right? I said he's good at establishing those relationships and building those relationships, but that's something that I admire in a leader and something that I'm trying to emulate a bit. But everyone's different. Every individual has their own preference of how they want to be led, and everybody takes leadership in a different way. So I'm still trying to figure it out a little bit with these guys, and as I'm getting to know them, what's best for them. Like some of the newer faces, Andrew Rowan, Cooper Robinson, I've never played with them.
Right.
So if they're in a slump, I don't quite know how to help them out yet, other than giving them reassurance, but maybe that's not what they need. Maybe that's not what they want. So we're still, because it's so early in the quad and we have faces that some of us have never been around, it's still just a big learning process.
I want to build off Steven's last question, and I'm really curious what your dynamic is like with Eric Shoji. Obviously, I think anybody looking on the outside sees like, okay, that libero position is pretty locked down with him, as long as he's on the national team, and a very vocal leader that we see on the court. But then, like you mentioned, all of the stuff behind the scenes, and I'm just so curious about all the dynamics. Does that create a lot of competition for everybody behind him? Is it more of a collaborative thing where he's, doing a lot of sharing and working with you guys? Do you guys, now that you've been on the team for so long, have a really tight relationship? Give us all of the insight there.
Yeah, I think it's, people may think that between Eric and I, there's a lot of like strife or competition, maybe more from my side than from his. And while there is like competition, don't get me wrong, I think he and I have established this really wonderful relationship, and it has been collaborative. In some of the past tournaments, how I would describe it is like, my role to help Eric is I'm going to memorize every bit of the scouting report. If I know I'm not playing, I'm going to memorize every bit of the scouting report, so that when he's out there and he has questions or he comes off the court, he can turn to me and I can say yes or no, you got to be in this position. Not just for Eric though, I try to do that for everybody so I can alleviate some of the cognitive pressure of a match. But specifically with Eric, he and I talk a lot, even if it's just a quick look for confirmation. To have him as the person that has been the senior in my position for so long has maybe pushed me further than I could have gone or would have been willing to go if I didn't have somebody like Eric in front of me. Obviously, he is this wonderful standard of a great volleyball player and a great libero specifically. And even since university, even since I was at Stanford, it's been like this chase to get Eric Shoji, right? It's fun. It's fun because, like I've said, it's helped me become the volleyball player that I am today. And I know that if I want to have a chance of beating Eric out, I have to be better than him. And to be better than him is a great goal that I'm hoping to attain, because he is such a wonderful player. But he does a very good job and has done a great job from the time that I entered the gym till now with these other liberos that we have coming in, of sharing his knowledge, sharing his vision of the game, and helping us out however he can. Even if it's just getting coffee for us on Friday, which is what he did before we left. So,
What's the coffee order? I saw the photo, but what's the coffee order?
Simple. I just got a latte with whole milk.
Okay, nice.
Does that fly when you're in France? I feel like you can't just go with that like simple latte with whole milk.
Oh no, that's how they want you to drink it.
All right, cafe au lait.
Cafe au lait.
There we go. Awesome. Kyle, again, I just want like, as much as you feel willing to share,
Sure.
with this 1 week under your belt, can you speak to any of the similarities or differences maybe with people who watched the team in Paris, watched the team from previous years, and then this year, as you mentioned, with the new squad, like, are you guys, attacking more from a certain side? Do you feel like the blocking defense is different? What are the differences that you've noticed so far this year from maybe the team in years past on the court?
Let's take the last couple of years, because I think we were a pretty successful team, through the Olympic qualifier, through, we had some struggles in VNL last year, but once we got to the Olympics, everything was moving and grooving. With the history of that group, the core players had been together since well before Rio. That was a well-functioning group, a well-functioning team where everybody understood what their role was. Other than maybe TJ and Averill, everybody else was pretty much a solid contributor for the 2 prior quads. We don't have that sort of, obviously, battle-tested history together yet. So I would say the biggest difference from, week 1 in Brazil versus Paris is we don't have the knowledge yet of, okay, we're down 22-23, they're back to serve. We need to obviously side out and score a couple of points. Who is going to be the guy that's going to help us get there? Times it's been TJ. A lot of times it's been Aaron Russell, kind of the silent killer. But I think everybody's mind probably goes to Matt Anderson. We don't have our Matt Anderson yet. We don't have our TJ. We don't have our Aaron Russell. This was actually something we discussed yesterday in a team meeting, that we have all of these guys on the court, but we don't know who those couple of guys are yet that are gonna pull us out of that run or that rut and give us an opportunity to win the set. But how I would phrase it to everybody is, mentally, each one of us has to be ready to fill that role. Every time we step on the court, we have to be ready to fill that role, because I would love to look to somebody else and say, you got to get that kill. We're in the process of building that. I think that's one of the cool things about where we are with the quad, because it could be any one of us. And I think you could see someone emerge in that role. You could see someone emerge with that potential, and maybe they didn't know that they had it. Maybe we as a group didn't know that they had it, but through trial and error, through the difficulties of a match, the stresses of a match, they could end up becoming that player. They could develop those skills, and that would just make us all the stronger as a group. So hopefully through this process, and I think if you saw where we were in our scrimmages against Brazil and where we finished against Cuba that first week, it was a completely different team. So I would assume through this entire tournament, we could see some faces and some of that trust really start to solidify.
I think that's such a cool answer, because you look at week 1 and then you see some of those things happening, like Kyle Hobus goes off, and then a couple games later it's Cooper Robinson goes off, and then I think it was the Cuba match. I might have my matches wrong, but it's Gasman who gets the match-winning serve, and it's like you see those guys stepping up. So I think it's so neat that you can point to specific examples from week 1 where you're seeing that happen, and I'm excited to see it happen in week 2 as well.
Yeah, I guess you may have touched on it there, but for any of our fans watching or listening to this, who are getting ready to watch the matches, whether in person or from home, what should they know about this team and this so early in this quad? What should they know about the team and this team specifically, and then just the men's program too, overall?
Yeah, I would say this team specifically, from what we saw in Brazil, even if we're down, we don't give up. We're definitely in some situations where we could have mentally cracked and just let the opponent run away with the match, and we didn't. So I have to commend us on that. You know, we have the energy, the spunk, the desire to stick around, and it may not always be pretty, but we're going to be here. And as far as the program as a whole, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us to get some real exposure within the States for men's volleyball. It's very rare that we get to play here in such a high-profile environment. So to have us featured on home soil against some great competition this week, it is going to hopefully give us the chance to circulate into people's vision or understanding of the sport. Obviously, we would love to have a men's league within the States. Realistically, that's not very possible right now. Hopefully in the future, but this is the next best thing, if not better, when you have the Stars and Stripes in Chicago, Illinois playing. So I would just say to people, like, be willing to learn, be willing to watch with true open eyes and experience what men's volleyball is all about, because it's a very fun sport. And I think it's pretty captivating with the athleticism and the ability. So be ready to support USA.
One question to build off part of that answer is, you know, as you mentioned, you have guys on the team, and I'm going to forget some, but, you know, like Rowan, Flexen, Cooper, that have come directly from the NCAA men's ecosystem environment, if you will. And for lack of a better phrase, that is almost like the men's pro league in the US before you know they get to play with us. What is your take on the current state of men's NCAA and that being, you know, a viable option to build into the national team, and just where the game stands right now from your perspective?
It's completely necessary. If we didn't have the NCAA, it might be more difficult for us to maintain a relevant status on the international side of the game. I think from when I graduated versus now, which was 7 years ago, 6 years ago, there has been a bit of a shift in the collegiate game for the better. I think you're seeing more talented foreigner players come into NCAA. Obviously, Moni Nikolov, both of the Nikolov brothers, but you have other guys like Jakob Tella from Hawaii a few years ago that are helping raise the game in the US. Some people might interpret that as they're taking opportunities away from American-born players. While there's probably some validity to that, it only helps those American-born players that are in the NCAA play at a higher level. So to have Cooper, Andrew go up against Moni in the national championship, if they want to beat one of the best players in the world, they got to raise their level as individuals, but as a team. Similar with Flexen, they're in the same conference, so they played each other quite a few times. So I think where NCAA volleyball stands right now, it's at a really good launching pad spot to help guys come into the gym and be ready to contribute. Obviously, there still is a difference between NCAA volleyball and where the highest international volleyball is, and even some of the medium-level international volleyball is. However, once those guys are ready to go professionally, where they start is plenty high enough. And after a few years, we can see some real significant growth in a lot of players that leave college and then come back to the national team.
For staying on the topic with, you know, men's and boys volleyball here, for USA Volleyball, I know we would like to see all 50 states sanction boys volleyball in the United States by LA 2028. I guess in your own words, in your perspective, how would the men's game truly take advantage of LA 2028 volleyball Olympic volleyball in the U.S. How does boys and men's volleyball truly take advantage of that opportunity to have, the Olympic Games in LA?
That's a good question. I think it starts with events like this. Just having more chances to view volleyball in person. We were just talking about NCAA. It's great that championship moves around every year. But, if Volleyball World would like to help us out a little bit and continue allowing us the chance to host within the States leading up to the Olympics, I think that's all for the better. If we're really trying to promote this game to men's and boys volleyball around the country, I would say keep doing the sorts of things that y'all are doing as well with this podcast, getting exposure out with some of the athletes. That might be where one of the bigger disconnects is, where there are the athletes that compete, and there are the boys and men that also play, but there's not a direct connection between the two. I think as national team players, we still exist a little bit as our own entity. So if we could cross over a little bit more, I think that would help get people's attention, make a bit more of a genuine investment in volleyball, not just us, but volleyball as a sport. But if we could stream more professional matches, or if we could stream or broadcast more international matches, I think same thing. You just get a little bit more exposure to maybe some areas that are in the process of building boys or men's volleyball. And it's just an added reinforcement as to why they should.
Yeah. It's encouraging to see, talking specifically with Volleyball World and Volleyball Nations League, CBS Sports Network is streaming those games now, or broadcasting those games. So, and national championship was on ESPN. It's encouraging to see that more, and hopefully, we're seeing it a lot on the women's side with the pro leagues too, but hopefully that kind of trickles over more with the men's game as it continues to grow here. But yeah, seeing CBS kind of take Volleyball Nations League is very encouraging. Hopefully they continue to do that. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I think also you're talking about the exposure, and then it seems like it's a lot up to the individual right now to build their own brand and create that exposure for themselves, which obviously a lot of individuals are very good at, but
right.
Some maybe aren't as inclined to make the perfect TikTok video or anything like that. So I think that's such a great observation that the more that you can play in front of those people that want to see you and get that message out there, that'll kind of help grow things. I think it's such a great ground up perspective that you have on that.
Definitely. Thank you.
Switching gears a little bit, and just kind of want to talk about you specifically. And something we ask all of our guests is just, how were you introduced to the sport of volleyball?
I was born into it. My parents were pretty integral in establishing club volleyball in the state of Florida. They ran the first volleyball club, first organized volleyball club, youth club in Florida.
What club is that?
Tampa Bay Juniors. No longer exists, but it was up and running for 30 years. My dad was a PE teacher and the volleyball coach at my school. It was a pre-K through 12 school, so I went there my whole life. He was the volleyball coach. My mom actually worked with USA Volleyball for quite a while. She was on the board. She was one of the leads of youth club in the States. And then my parents also run volleyball tournaments for a living. A lot of different avenues, but volleyball is the glue for my family. My sister played as well, but we had other opportunities to explore sports, and we did. I played football, baseball, basketball, etc. But I was 12, which I don't know if that's early or not, but I was 12 when I realized I could be pretty good at volleyball. I started playing when I was 7, but it was just really for fun. But when I was 12 years old, I made I don't know how the national team developmental program differentiates age groups nowadays, but when I was joining high performance, which is what it was called when I started, I was 12 and I was joining the select age group, which was 14s. So I played up with Micah Christensen and Aaron Russell. And that was the first time I met some of those guys. It's kind of at that moment I knew volleyball was worth pursuing, and baseball was my other big sport at the time. Maybe baseball was something I should move on from. But I grew up in a gym. I was just always around. After school, my dad had practice. I'd go in the gym. I'd grab a ball, hit up against the wall, constantly being yelled at to hold the ball while he's trying to talk. But it was, looking back on it, very natural that I gravitated towards volleyball. Not just because it was so present, but it was something that each one of my family members was so passionate about. We took a lot of vacations growing up, but almost all of them were in some way connected to volleyball. Like there was this road trip that we took when I was going into 4th grade from Florida to Salt Lake City. Girls Junior Nationals was in Sandy, Utah at the time. So we took a road trip for, I think it was 5 total weeks on the road, which was a great vacation, but ultimately it was there for volleyball. So we did a lot of things like that growing up, where volleyball was just kind of around, but I never had any issue with it. It's a wonderful, wonderful sport, and it has been great for my family. Obviously, it has given them their livelihood, but it has given us something to really bond as a nuclear family unit.
Was there a part of the game that came really easy to you, you felt like, and then other parts that maybe you had to build up over time and work on a little bit more? And I'm curious what those would be.
I think if you ask my dad, he'll have a different answer.
We'll follow up with him after that.
I remember when I was being recruited going into university, Marv Dunphy asked me this kind of question, but I think it was more phrased at like, what do you perceive as your best skill? Or if you're going to rank your skill set, what do you think is number one? For me, serving. Obviously, I don't serve anymore, which is kind of funny, right? That's why I'm saying you should ask my dad. But I was a setter up until my senior year, my last year of college. So I got to serve, and that was, it's still a part of my game that I take a lot of pride in, even if I don't perform the skill hardly ever anymore. But I think because I was in the gym hitting a ball against the wall, I got my arm pretty well functioning at a young age, and I was this tiny little thing, but I could jump serve from the time I was 7 years old. And there were players in my dad's gyms that I would try to emulate and imitate. One girl in particular, her name's Sarah Kirkwood. She was fantastic in the city of Tampa as a volleyball player and went on to play collegiately, but she had a wicked jump serve. And I remember being like 8 years old, looking at that like, wow, I want to serve like that. I want to serve like that. So I would say from a very young age, it was serving. Obviously now it's different. I have a lot of confidence in my ability to set the ball because I have been a setter for a long time of my career. Serve receive is something that I've, like we were talking about, watching Eric and learning from Eric, something that I have taken from him and reinforced as crucial to the role of libero. So something that I've maybe developed a little bit later in life, a little bit later in my volleyball career, into placing an extreme importance on and becoming really proficient at.
So what I'm hearing is that eventually we'll see you as a service sub. That's what I'm hearing.
I was going to say, if we see you out of the libero jersey, we know Karch is bringing you in as a serve sub, maybe?
I've been trying for years to get that to happen. So if you guys can help me out, I appreciate it.
That's awesome. You mentioned just your time at university too. What was it like playing at Stanford? And we talked a little bit about it with looking up to Eric as well.
Yeah.
But just what was your time like at Stanford?
I loved it. We didn't always have the best volleyball teams. We had one really gifted group of players my sophomore year where we just unfortunately fell apart at the wrong time. But as a university, it was the perfect fit for me. I'm a very curious individual, and I have a lot of broad interests. Stanford gave me the chance to explore those interests. I was talking about this yesterday with Eric. One of the harder tracks at Stanford is human biology, which is what he studied. I believe Kavika even took some human biology classes. I did the human biology core, and if you do the core, it's an intensive year of study your sophomore year. Once you get through the core, it's kind of like you've been given the opportunity, you've been given the green light to go ahead and finish your hum bio degree. And I said, I'm going to change to something else, which nobody really ever does. So I minored in human biology, which is just one more class. And of course, I didn't take the easy class. I took one of the harder elective courses. But I studied English literature as my major. And then I went on to get a master's in communications journalism. So I have all these different areas of interest that I was able to tap into at Stanford, and hearing how different universities structure their academic or their academia, I don't know that I would have been able to do that at a different school. Maybe there were a few, but I didn't have to declare a major until my sophomore year. I didn't have to go in to hit all these prerequisites in my freshman year and sophomore year. You have the chance to dabble, and I really did. And I think it was perfect for me and the people there. I met some of my best friends at Stanford, and there are so many different walks of life that come to that campus. Being somebody that went to the same school for 14 years in Tampa, Florida, it was pretty much a little bubble. And then you go across the country to a very liberal area in Northern California. You're exposed to all these different personalities, people that have already sold companies for millions of dollars in their freshman year. It's just an experience that really opens your eyes, and I was introduced to different ways of life.
Would like to kind of running up on our time here, but would like to kind of end with a fun question here.
Okay.
You got married recently. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
How was the wedding? What teammates attended? Who was the best dancer on the dance floor there?
Best dancer has to be my cousin. She held it down. The wedding was fantastic. Planning a wedding is not an easy thing. It takes a lot of intention and effort and time, but it came together really well. We did it over Labor Day weekend, so we had basically 3 full days of celebration because we're outside of the country so frequently. We didn't have time to do a bachelor or bachelorette, so what we did was we invited our groomsmen and bridesmaids to meet us on Friday night, and then on Saturday, we broke up into the guys and the girls. We went on a little kayaking and snorkeling excursion while the girls went to the spa. Then we came together for some pizza and mingling. The next day we had our rehearsal, and then the wedding was on Monday. We had Jeff Jendrick and his girlfriend that came, and Kyle Russell and his wife that came. The other guys were already at their pro teams. It was a month after the Olympics, so it would have been hard for anyone else to join. But just to have those 2 people there meant a lot to me. This guys I spent a lot of time with in the gym. So it was nice to have some some very, very familiar faces and very recently familiar faces there to celebrate with us.
Between the two of them, who was the best dancer?
Kyle. maybe Jeff's girlfriend, but Kyle.
Jeff doesn't have the moves, no?
Not quite.
Not quite.
Gosh,
That's awesome. Maybe he needs to work on that in his Middle Beast Academy.
Yeah.
Maybe
The
next
Next
subsection.
video. Next video.
tutorial.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, thanks so much for sitting down and talking with us. Just truly, your insight on every topic is amazing, and yeah, we really appreciate it, especially going into this week where we're looking forward to watching the competition. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, anything else you'd like to share or talk about before we let you go here? No?
All good.
Where can
Middle
people-
Beast Academy.
There you go. Where can people follow you on social media?
I have a Twitter. I don't use it. So I would say on Instagram, my handle is @Dagos, KYL, DAGOSKYL.
Perfect. Well, Kyle, good luck this week. We're looking forward to it. And for all our fans and viewers watching, check out the men's national team this week on VB.TV and then CBS Sports Network as well. But for now, we'll leave you with this is the USA Volleyball Show, the official podcast of USA Volleyball. Thanks for listening or watching.